Welcome, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the new episode of the Myles High Podcast. This is Myles Munroe Jr., your host. And as always, the vision and goal of this podcast is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist. Always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right? So I got a good topic I want to discuss today. It actually stems from Sharice's and I's last podcast that we did together, my wife. We did a podcast just kind of discussing our relationship and how we built what we have, and going into our marriage, and we gave a lot of tips and a lot of our examples and experiences that we went through, and we got such a great response that I kind of wanted to hone in on the topic of choosing the right partner. I think it's important for us to, take that decision that we're making to spend the rest of our lives with a particular individual, to take that decision serious, to be intentional about that decision, and to ensure that we're thinking long term when we make our choices, right? The majority of successful and wealthy people in a survey were asked, what's one of the greatest choices that they've made, right? And the majority of them answered, man, the greatest choice that I've made throughout my entire career is the person that I chose to marry. Who we choose to spend the rest of our lives with, who we choose to call our significant other, it affects our personal life, our professional life, and our spiritual life, right? All facets of our lives, all facets of our being is affected by the person that we choose to spend the most of our time with. It isn't a haphazard thing where you see power couples or you see individuals who are successful because there's someone that's standing right next to them, or sometimes even in the front of them, who are cheering them on, pushing them on, taking the load off of them in areas that they need the load taken off so that they can focus on the main thing, right? I'm a big promoter of keeping the main thing, but it'll be difficult to do that if you don't have a support system behind you that's able to support you and embrace all of the other responsibilities that we have as human beings. And what better support system than a spouse, right? Whether it's a husband or a wife, that person that you choose to spend the rest of your life with is, one of the most important decisions that you can make in your life, whether it's your personal life, your professional life, your spiritual life. That person that we choose to spend the most of our time with, the person that we choose to start a family with, the person that we choose to build a home with, that decision is of utmost importance. And I think we need to take it seriously. And I just wanted to kind of break down some of the tips that I would recommend and I would advise you to consider when making that choice. Marriage is more than just finding the right person. Primarily, marriage is about being the right person. Oftentimes we hear people saying, man, I'm looking for someone to complete me, right? I'm looking for someone to make me whole, right? And it's always crazy because, and I mean, all of us kind of had that thought, that perspective at some point in our life, especially at a young age. But as you grow old and you learn more and you develop as an individual, at least for me, I started to realize that I didn't want to bring someone into this intimate space who needed me to fill them up, or I needed them to fill me up, right? I wanted to come into this space, or I knew I needed to be in this space as a whole person, right? Someone that understood who I was, where I was going, why I was here, what I could do, all of the 5 major questions that we kind of broke down on this pod a few pods ago. I wanted to have all of those questions answered, and I knew that it was important. Even if I didn't have all of them answered, I had the majority of them answered. And bringing someone into that union that is kind of along that same mindset is important. I think the person that we choose to join ourselves with should be making us better, right? We should be making each other better. It shouldn't be where our lives start to deteriorate, or we start to become less of ourselves, or we start to become less of the educated person that we were, or the professional person that we were, like where they changes for all the negative reasons. I think we should be encouraging them and developing them as individuals, and they're doing the same thing to us. And then at the same time, we're developing ourselves in a relationship, right? And leading into a marriage that could, not only bode successful for us individually, but bode successful for us as a couple as well. So I wanted to offer some tips or some suggestions that I wanted to give. Right, I did some research, some reading, some investigating on my own. Some of these tips I've made use of myself in my journey, and some of them I just thought were good advice to recommend and to relay to you, my audience. So I'm not saying you need to take all of the tips and incorporate them into what you're doing, but use what you can apply. I think they all could, in some way, shape, or form, be beneficial in the way that you choose your partner. All right. So the first tip is to have a strong spiritual foundation. I think this is important because having a strong spiritual foundation keeps you focused and keeps you disciplined, right? I think when we have our faith as the base of not just our relationship decisions, but every decision that we make, I think more times than not, we're going to be in the right place at the right time, making those right decisions that need to be made, right? And our strong faith assists us in making those right and those needy decisions, right? Those in-time decisions that we have to make. So it keeps us focused, it keeps us disciplined, and it's something that I would say is probably one of the most important things you could do when deciding on who your partner should be, right? I know Sharice and I, when we were dating, we spoke about our faith, both of our faiths, quite a bit, right? Sharice came from a different spiritual background than I did. She grew up Anglican, and I grew up non-denominational, or with a kingdom mindset. And there are some differences that we experience, right? Traditionally in the church, the Anglican faith does things much more differently. They have slightly different beliefs and outlooks on their faith than I would as a non-denominational practice. So from a kingdom mindset, I think it was important for me to be open to allow, Sharice to express herself spiritually and express her faith the way that she wanted to. And she was open to kind of understanding who I was and where my faith came from, right? And how important it was to me. So it was something that we discussed on a day-to-day basis, right? We asked each other's questions, right? I asked her a lot of questions about her faith, and we made it a fun exercise, right? She wasn't too familiar with the kingdom teachings or the kingdom mindset when it comes to spirituality, but she was open. She was open to learning, open to experiencing, and I think it allowed us to ultimately be on the same page, right? When it comes to growing our faith together. I think it's important that she continues to work on herself as an individual, and me doing the same as an individual. And that only increases the bond that we can share in our faith growing together. But having a strong spiritual foundation is probably one of the most important things that you can do on the journey of choosing the right partner. The next tip I would give is to forget the checklist. Ladies and gentlemen, that checklist, or the person that you have that is depicted from the checklist that you're putting together, they do not exist. Okay? That perfect person that is the right height and the right body size and the right complexion with the right characteristics, and says and does the right things, and is in this right job, and has this great and right background that you're looking for, and they can cook well, and they can clean, and they can do all of these things that you have checked off on your list. person doesn't exist. They only exist in your mind, right? I could remember, my list that I had put together, and I had a good idea of what I wanted, right? And obviously we start with the physical, right? I wanted a beautiful individual, someone that I didn't mind waking up to, every day, looking at and just admiring, right? But I quickly realized that, when you check off all the beauty stuff and then you get to the characteristic traits and all of these intangibles that we carry as human beings, and all of us being different, I started to realize that, man, I couldn't find someone that I could check each and every item off on my list. And I just started to realize, like, man, either I'm going to find someone that's beautiful and has everything I want from a physical trait standpoint, but they don't have any of the characteristic traits that I like. Or I can find someone that isn't too, easy on the eyes, right? But they have all of the character traits, right? And they just have to figure out, like, okay, what's the balance that I want, right? what are the things that I can live with and that I can't live without? So I kind of just, forgot my checklist, tore it up, threw it away, because I think the checklist also puts us in a box, right? It causes us not to be as open as we should to experience, like, new individuals, new connections. We can find love in the strangest places. And sometimes it's outside of our circles, right? Outside of our expectations, outside of the box that we've built for ourselves. So do away with that checklist is one of my recommendations, and just be open. Be open to experiencing new beginnings, new friendships. We'll get to that in a bit, but just be open to experiencing new things that you probably didn't anticipate you experiencing, right? And I think, you'll be surprised once you let down your guard and just be open to newer and fresher things, the options that are going to avail themselves to you that may surprise you and could end up being, one of the best pairings or decisions that you've made in your life. All right, and then the next tip I wanted to recommend is to be all one. And Sharice and I spoke about this in our pod that we did together. And it just talked about being alone, right? And what being alone actually means. It doesn't just mean being single and being by yourself, but it means working on yourself, understanding the 5 questions that you have to answer for yourself, right? That's who am I? Where am I from? Why am I here? What can I do? Where am I going? Those are the 5 questions that you should be working on. And I think once you're able to really understand who you are, then you're able to be a more total, complete person, a more of a whole individual that you can now bring someone else into the fold. There's this saying that people say all the time, like when they introduce their spouse or when they introduce their significant other, and they say, I want to introduce you to my better half. Subconsciously and theoretically, like that, I don't agree with that statement. And it's mainly because, like, we're both supposed to be wholes, right? We're supposed to be complete individuals joining together, right? And for me, my wife is my better whole, right? My better, maybe not whole, my better three quarters, my better 75%. No, she don't agree. Okay, cool. But she is a whole person that I'm joining to myself as a whole individual. And I think that's how the bond should be made, right? I don't want, and I never wanted to have, someone like Sharice in my life to complete me, right? I don't want anybody to complete me, because, if things don't work out, or, let's knock on wood, Sharice passes and she leaves, I still have to carry on with my life, right? And be able to move on. And I'm sure she would disagree, because, she and I have had this conversation before. And she's like, if I go, you ain't getting married again, or you ain't this, that. I'll just be like, come on, babe. Let's be real.
I'll pull both of y'all. So
nah, but we're supposed to be whole individuals, and that's what being all one is, right? Yes, you may be alone. Yes, you may be a single individual, but you're working on yourself, working on defining who you are, understanding and discovering what your purpose is, going through and developing your gifts. And on that journey of life, on that journey of purpose, that's when it's the best time for you to identify someone and to join with that person to live out the both of your lives. The next thing would be to start with friendship. I don't encourage jumping into a committed relationship off the bat, right? And I could remember when I was a teenager, getting into girls and really feeling myself, right? And I went to my dad and be like, yo, Dad, this is my girlfriend. I want to introduce you to my girl. And he was like, okay, cool. Like, this is what you want to do? You sure? Like, Chara, you young. You got a lot of life to live, a lot of learning to do. You sure you want to be committed this early? Kids, teenagers, we think we know it all. We think we have it all together. And I was like, of course, I got it. I'm good. But in hindsight, I was nowhere ready for a committed relationship. And I think just becoming friends, right? And I think that's the good thing about Sharice and I. She and I were friends first, right? We discussed this on our last pod. And, we had a friendship from high school. And we went through our young adult years, even into our adult years, just as being friends. And that developed into us growing fond of each other, deciding to date. And even in the dating phase, right, we still continued on as friends. So I would suggest that, and I know it's hard sometimes for you to maybe find someone in your friend pool, because that's kind of what, Sharice and I kind of worked out to be. But if you meet someone, right, and you think you're attracted to this person, or you find this person attractive and you think you want to maybe see if something can work out, I would suggest not jumping into a committed relationship off the bat, right? Maybe for a year, 6 to 12 months, just be friends, just kind of date, kind of court each other, date a few people, see, who you get along with the best. Because I think as we grow, especially as young men, right, when we're 18, 19, 20, we don't really know what we want. We see the physical and we think like that's all it's about. And as we get older, we realize that it's beyond the physical beauty that a female can offer, right? We want to know what it is intellectually, what her aspirations are from a professional lifestyle, what's her faith, what's her spiritual life like. All of these important questions that we need to ask and we need to communicate. And the only way we could do that, or the best way, not the only way, but the best way that we can do that is if we start off as friends and just kind of get to know each other. Don't rush into anything. And that leads me to the next tip, right? My fellas out there, some of my women as well. I wanted to encourage you to think with the right head. Ladies and gentlemen, let's not make decisions based off of lust, or let's not let our lust make our decisions for us. Right? Think with the right heads, and that's a head on top of our bodies. I can't tell you how many relationships I've known that did not work out because they didn't put the horse before the carriage, right? They didn't line the ducks up in a row. There were things that we should focus on more so than the physical attraction or anything intimate, right? Getting to know someone, really understanding who they are, what their history is, their family history, the way that they were brought up, how they were taught. These are the things that we should be thinking through before making a lustful decision. So let's think with the right heads, everyone. Let's use the heads on top of our bodies. My guys, let's not use the heads that kind of takes control when at certain points in the day or in the week. Like, I understand, and this is a real thing, and I want to be as real and honest as I can. But let's try to be mature about it. Let's try to be disciplined about it, and let's think with the right head, right? And the last tip is the 80-20 rule. And I'm sure we've all heard about this rule, and this kind of goes back to forgetting the checklist, right? Because there's always going to be 80% of someone that you love, or that you like, or that you can understand and grow with. And then there's that 20% that 20% that's just like, boy, I don't know if I could do this, right? This is something that's unexpected, or something that just catches you by surprise, right? But I think if we can really focus on the 80% and weigh the 20%, and weigh it in the sense of, is this something that I can live with, right? Are these baggages that I can carry, right? Because we all have baggages when we come into a relationship, right? Especially if we're, much older, like in our 30s or 40s or whatever, and getting into a relationship, you come with a history already, right? Some experiences. So there are things that you bring into a relationship that, some habits that you've developed, some trauma that you have experienced, and you come into a relationship, and there's this sense of, okay, I need to get to know and unpack all of these things with this individual, and is this something that they can bear? And the same for them, is them unpacking all of their issues and their traumas and their experiences something that I can bear. And I think that's the issue with a lot of the marriages that don't work out, right? Because the statistics show that 50% of marriages tend not to work out. And I think it's all because, people run into this 20% that, isn't great or isn't the best about their spouse, and they just choose to call it quits. They don't want to fight through it. They don't want to work through it. They don't want to grow with this person, right? Accept their good, the advantages, the pros about them, but also accepting their flaws, right? And the cons about them as well. So, if you have to break it down even to writing everything out, right? Write the things that you love about this person, write down the 80%. This is everything that I love, that I can see myself growing old with this person. And then the 20%, you're writing that out too. And man, these are some red flags that I see, or some things that I don't know if I can work with. And then make your decision, right? Either you're going to choose to, I can take this on, and I think we can work through these differences, or, these are things that are non-negotiable for me, and I'm gonna choose not to go any deeper with this relationship. I think for Sharice and I, I don't want to speak for her, so I'm going to speak for me. But when I kind of weighed the pros and cons of her as an individual, being in a relationship with me, I started to realize that the cons really weren't that serious, right? There were things that I didn't like, and things that I, didn't know if I can grin and bear. But as we started to continue to grow together and develop, I started to realize that she wasn't as bad as she may seem, right? She's a little firecracker, a little fiery. That's, one of the traits that I like, but it's also, it's kind of those like, you like it, but you hate it at the same time.
Who's gonna tell a waiter your food's not right?
So that's a meme that she always just remind me of. There's a meme that introverts mostly, but men, they'd be like, why do you put up with this talkative, fiery female in your life? And it's like, yo, who else could tell the waiter that my order wrong, right? So weigh the pros, weigh the cons, and make a decision. And again, don't allow the 20% to discourage you from joining into something that could be something great, right? And that you can create and build a life with that you won't be able to find with someone else. There's no blueprint for this, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be different for each and every one of us, right? It worked out. It worked a certain way for me. It worked a certain way for my wife. It worked a certain way for my team. But each of us have been able to figure out and choose the partner that we wanted to live the rest of our lives with. And these are just some tips that I wanted to just kind of break down, right, and discuss and kind of shed some light on, of which I used in my experience, and some that I thought was just some good advice. But I think this would probably be good for me and you to hop back on a pod together so that we could talk. She rolling her eye at me right now. But I think we could be helpful, right? And our experiences and our story and things that we've learned. You don't agree?
So is this your way of inviting me on the show next week?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll be there.
You will?
I'll be there.
Do I have to cook
Make
anything
sure there's
for
a
you?
platter.
All right, cool. So there you have it. So I think my wife and I are gonna come back for round 2 and talk about relationships again. I just think it's important for us to really be intentional about this decision, man, because this decision can really make us or break us as individuals, right? Because it's easy if we're going through life by ourselves, right? But the minute we bring someone into that equation, then the focus shifts just from us as an individual to now a unit, right? I got to make sure I'm able to take care of this person, or we're able to take care of each other and support each other and do all of these things that need to be done in a relationship. And you don't want to be selfish in it, right? It's a learning process. It's growing pains, like I like to describe it. But it has to be something that you accept and that you are aware that you're going to have to be building through. And again, Sharice and I have, conversations quite a bit, and I think our communication just allows us to continue to build our union. So these were just some tips I wanted to offer to you. Hopefully they were helpful. You heard it here first. My wife's going to be joining me next week on the pod, and we're going to dive into, some of these tips a little more. I think it's going to be a good conversation. Hopefully we get a great response again. And again, the tips that I gave today and, whatever Sharice and I are going to discuss next week, it's no blueprint to anything, right? These are just advice from our experiences and our journey. And I want you to pull from it what you can, and what doesn't apply, you could toss it to the side. But, I'm just here to kind of just be a voice of reason, a voice of encouragement, and just try to impact and influence your lives in a positive way. All right. So this is the point in the pod now where I introduce the milestone for today. And the milestone is simply that stop looking for a partner and focus on your goals and building your life. And the right person will eventually find you. All right. Don't focus on trying to find that person or trying to complete yourself. Focus on completing yourself. Focus on discovering who you are and why you are. And I think on that journey, you'll find the right person, right? That right person will come along and you'll be able to identify them and be like, this is the person that I feel is right for me. And last bit of advice, the person that you choose, just make sure you wake up every day and choose them, right? Because marriage is a choice, guys. Love is a choice, right? It's not an emotion. It's something that we choose to do. And we have to wake up every day and choose that person, right? Be disciplined enough and matured enough to choose that person and make that relationship work. Okay. So that brings us to the end of this pod. I'm always excited when I can, discuss these topics, especially stuff that are personal to me, things that I've gone through, and that I'm able to kind of use as a recommendation for you as the audience. I'm always grateful for you guys listening. If you want to talk about anything, let's discuss some things, drop me a comment here. I'll definitely be replying back to you guys. But as always, my goal and vision for this pod is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist, always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right, until next time, you guys stay blessed.